Just like we all drew it up, right? Welcome into Texans on Tap. I'm Brandon Strange with Charlie Palillo and Josh Jordan. You can follow them on X at Palillo and at Josh Jordan 975 and read their work on sportsmap.com. For the second season in a row, Houston has beaten an opponent in the first round by at least 20 points. Pretty good. The score doesn't quite tell the story of this game. Texans shoot themselves in the foot multiple times in the first half, yet somehow put 10 quick points on the board to end the half. Texans end up rolling the Chargers 32-12. Guys, I think we all want to talk about the heroics of CJ Stroud, but we have to talk about the defense that took control of this game and held LA to just 6 points after the first three quarters. 4 sacks on Herbert. They intercept him 4 times. We said Will Anderson Jr. needed to show up. Boy, did he, and the entire defense came ready to play. Charlie, let's start with you. Talk about how big it was to hold the Chargers just 6 points in that first quarter and allowed CJ and the offense to recover from some early mistakes.
It was a defensive tour de force performance. Statistically, it would just be an utter pummeling, save for the one breakdown late, which when you're comfortably ahead, okay, Lad McConkey, that's a bad young man. Gets loose for 86 yards, but you take that out. The Chargers had barely 100 yards from the start of the second quarter to that point in the fourth quarter. The first quarter and a half, the Chargers, it felt like they should have been up by at least 14, 17 points. But the Texans defense bowed up, held them to a couple of field goals, bought time for the offense to snap out of its early game coma. I mean, more than a quarter and a half into the game, the Texans offense was booed off the field appropriately after a fourth consecutive sucky possession. The defense just brilliant. Now, these weren't the Air Coryell Chargers of the late 70s, whatever their stats are, but that Herbert throws just 3 interceptions the entire season, and the Texans get him 4 times in this game. It's part of why we love sports, right? You could put in all the data, but in an individual game, we don't know how it's going to play. In the Texans' own wildest hopes, they wouldn't have said, yeah, we're going to pick off Herbert 4 times in this game. But they did. He made a couple of bad throws. They also clearly rattled him. That ball way over McConkey for the easy pick 6 for Murray. His first interception, I know he has a big arm, but rolling right to throw it way downfield, all the way across to the left side with 2 defenders back there. Also a hell of a pick by Kamari Lassiter on the play. For the circumstances, this wasn't shutting down a great offense, but for the circumstances, it's one of the greatest defensive performances in Texans history.
Yeah, truly incredible. Way to go, defense. Lassiter, Stingley, my Lord, the pass rush. And it may have gone a little differently. The Texans shot themselves in the foot early with the Mechie fumble that happened really early in the game. It looked bad, but I know the defense deserves a lot of credit, but for me, this was more about CJ Stroud, about him avoiding what would have been a safety by throwing the ball away and getting it just outside of the tackle box. And then they go on a 99-yard drive. So to me, that's where it really turned. Of course, that the bad snap where CJ made the great throw to Hutchinson, that got him going. I tweeted at the time, I'm like, there it is, the off-schedule play, the best play in the Texans playbook. And then after that, Nico started getting going, and man, Joe Mixon finishing it off. That's probably how they wanted to draw it up, is get some points on the board and have Joe Mixon finish it off late in the game. They did that. I'm just glad to see that CJ Stroud looked like that dude today. And that's why I picked him to win. I thought they could flip a switch in this game. I saw a lot of similarities between the Browns last year having the number 1 defense in yards, Chargers having the number 1 defense in points. I thought we could see a breakout this week, and thank goodness it happened. Way to go, Texans.
Stroud's legs were more important in this game than they've been for most of his 2 years. The 27-yard run, the longest of his career, a couple of other key runs, including what at the time seemed to be a put-away first down that they marked it just short, but then, okay, sneak it for the first down on the next play. And give it up to Bobby Slowick. Offense doing absolutely nothing. 3rd and 16. CJ whiff on the shotgun snap, then just run around. I don't know what happened to the Chargers defensively, whether just the whole rhythm of the play was thrown off, because Hutchinson's open 30 yards down the field with 3 Chargers defensive backs deeper than him. I couldn't believe how big a pocket there was but CJ had the poise to gather the ball and then set up and get the throw downfield. And that was the spark of the 99-yard drive, 37-yard play. Oh, yeah, throw it downfield to Nico Collins. Good chance of good things happening. Also on that drive, Nico, monster performance. Mixon, a grinded out 106 yards with the 17-yard touchdown for the capper, his longest run of the game, right? It was a day of 4 yards, 6 yards, 5 yards once they got it started. Right. CJ Stroud had to do a lot of improv. It's not like the offensive line was a fortress of protection for him, but they out-toughed a tough Jim Harbaugh team. And in the end, just a complete Charger power outage the defense administered.
Yeah, Stroud used his legs, but can my guy please learn to slide? Geez, leading with your knees is not necessarily the most. Well, it was effective in this game, but it's not the safest. Wolf, Charlie talked about statistical anomalies and Herbert's turnovers. Mixon hadn't fumbled the ball in 1,082 touches, I believe. But man, the offense, I want to get back to what Josh is talking about here, because this was the return of Superman CJ. The highlight of the game will be that broken play that ends up in Hutchinson's hands at midfield. What did, Josh, you talked about it. Charlie, what did you think of the way that CJ answered and responded to that early adversity in the game?
Well, not only had he not had a good game in a while, he didn't start well in this game. He looked rattled. Missed a couple of passes, got hit for the ball that just fluffed up there for a terrific interception by, it was Dean James. Forget his last name. Derwin James almost with a tremendous interception on a ball that CJ underthrew a little bit, taking a shot for Schultz in the corner. But while CJ Stroud is never going to be Lamar Jackson running, he does have some skill. So to tactically look to take off, I thought, it's been absolutely a strength of his, the patience to not look to run at the first sign of trouble, but that he took off for significant gains on a couple of plays, found his rhythm, right? Momentum is that elusive thing. You have it until you don't. You don't have it until you do. But all the tumblers clicked in for CJ Stroud, and they have reason to be optimistic, whether it's heading to Kansas City or Buffalo.
Yeah, absolutely. I love seeing CJ use his legs. It's funny. Watching the Ohio State Texas game, we saw some quarterbacks take off and run for some important gains at certain points in the game, and I think maybe CJ was like, man, why don't I take off and run a little bit? And it's funny, Herbert was the one when we were previewing this that we were worried that Herbert was going to get loose and get a bunch of rushing yards on the Texans, but they did a good job of holding him in check. So I was really pleased. And on that Mixon fumble, I was mad at Bobby Slowick there, because Nico and CJ were really cruising and clicking at that point in the game. And it looked like a trick play where Mixon was maybe going to throw a pass right there.
Definitely.
And then he tucked it away and then decided to run. And in that movement, he ended up fumbling there. The guy poked it away. So I was kind of upset with Bobby Slowick, like, man, don't get cute here. CJ's rolling with Nico. Let's just get this done and punch it in. But hey, all's well that ends well. I don't think we're going to be talking about a new offensive coordinator for the Texans. They won a playoff game. I think Bobby Slowick's going to be back, guys. Sorry, but we know how the Texans are. I don't think he's going anywhere, but maybe they can build off of this. And it was also, too, Deontay Johnson. I was excited when he finally caught a pass. Like, Mechie was really involved. And early on, Mechie was having a tough time. He almost fumbled a second time, but they called it an incomplete pass. And I was just thinking, like, where's Deontay Johnson here? He's struggling, but hey, didn't matter. Sweep it under the rug, move forward. I'm just glad that we're talking about CJ Stroud and also talking about Texans game that early on, if you were on Twitter, everybody's like, God, this is the ugliest, most awful game I've ever seen. And then it turned into one of the most exciting, wild games I've ever watched. So nice that the Texans were a part of a fun to watch football game, because that's why everybody was crapping on him before this week. They hadn't been playing well recently, but hey, they're moving forward. I like that their perception's getting a little bit better, and maybe we'll finally get a wild card game, not at 3:00 on a Saturday.
Joe Mixon's first fumble since 2021. Then a dumb frustration personal foul. I thought there was maybe some lingering anger from lost a fumble, but then he toted the rock to help salt the game away. After that, what this does is validate a solid season for the Texans, right? 10-7, you won a garbage division. If they lost to the Chargers, the season would not have been successful. Now it's a qualified success. It's house money if they're playing at Kansas City and Buffalo to an extent, because obviously they'll properly be an underdog in either circumstance, unless fortune favors. And oh my God, they're at home. But right, the glass ceiling for the Texans has been getting beyond the divisional round. So I don't think it's just a free roll of the dice for the franchise that they want to be taken seriously as a contender, as an upper echelon team. They're going to have to make that breakthrough one of these years. They've given themselves that opportunity.
I also quickly just wanted to give CJ credit. They were in 3rd and long almost this entire game. And we've seen that all season long. But last year, CJ was able to overcome that. He was able to do that today, even though there was a lot of 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 11s. I think we had a 2nd and 40 at one point in this game. But way to go, CJ, to still make great throws and not let the down and distance put him in a bad spot.
I didn't check the updated numbers after the Titans regular season finale, but through 16 games, the Texans had the longest third end average in the league. Right? Their average third end was something like 7.93 yards, the longest third down and distance average in the NFL. So maybe all that practice paid dividends in this game.
Going back to the Mixon fumble, I saw what he saw, which was open field. I think he was more comfortable in running that and trying to get it with his feet than trying to throw it. So I agree with you, Josh. I don't really see that play was necessary in that moment, especially given the momentum that Houston's offense seemed to have. The first half was just a microcosm of this team, though. There was some unfortunate mistakes, no run game to speak of. CJ Stroud spent, a lot of the time in the first under duress and inaccurate, but then and somehow they end the game with 8 penalties for 86 yards. This was not a very clean win at all, but it became a very, very exciting win. I want to go back to the corners, though, because we can't speak enough about what Stingley, Lassiter, and guys like Alshire were doing out there. Like Eric Murray had some plays. We critique the guys. We critique the general manager for roster moves or lack thereof, but we have to give Nick Caserio credit. He has hit on both Stingley and Lassiter and really tightened up and shored up what we thought was going to be a weakness of the team in the secondary. It turns out to be one of their strengths.
Well, look, 4th pick in the draft, supposed to be really good. What Stingley needed to do was improve his attendance grade. And did this season, playing all 17 games. No one questioned the way he played as a rookie or last season. It's just he missed 17 games over the 2 seasons. This year, perfect attendance, first team All-Pro, ball skills just absolutely tremendous. And it helps to have a little good fortune smile on you, right? The Chargers, Ladd McConkey, spectacular rookie season, capped with nearly 200 yards in this game. They have nothing else in the receiver department. At least in this game, right? Quentin Johnston, who came on the TCU product, he was a virtual zero. Will Dissly is a little possession tight end guy, right through his hands to Stingley to take it nearly to the house. But Stingley, sensational. Lassiter was a 2nd round pick. So, you're supposed to be pretty good, but he's been excellent. And this is where the safeties have been spotty and injuries, Petrie and Ward. And I actually think among the 3 of us, at least 2 of us would have caught the ball that Eric Murray had for the pick 6. But you know what? Right place, right time. So Eric Murray, who originally came to the Texans on an absurd Bill O'Brien contract dole out. Well, Murray's beyond that contract, but because a solid guy, solid professional, you're not getting $6 million a year anymore, buddy. But he's playing here for like a quarter of that. And, well, he had his signature Texans play in this game. Good for him.
He did. And Quentin Johnston, we talked about it in the preview that he has a history of drops. He'd kind of cleaned that up. And I mentioned, like, that's a big moment, big game. Maybe the dropsies come back again. And sure enough, he dropped some today. And that play Stingley had on him when it was like 4th and 1, and they ran that little out route for like -1 yards. And Stingley like basically defended the pass and tackled him. I think the ball ended up being incomplete after they looked at it again. Just an incredible job by Stingley and the Chargers there. You don't run past the sticks when you need 1 yard. I don't really know what they were thinking there, but hey, it worked out, benefited the Texans.
Yeah, the Murray interception though was it's like what we talked about in the preview here. It's playing that complementary football to your line. The line set it up with chaos, with guys getting home. I mean, Herbert was wearing Texans players all game. They were in his face all game, whether they were getting, hitting his hand as he's throwing, or just whether they were throwing him down to the ground. He got pancaked at one point. I don't know if that was the Autry one or not, but just getting suplexed and all sort of wrestling moves out there on the open field. I don't know. Does this performance by the defense really put Houston on the map as a very dangerous playoff team going forward?
The ability to rush the passer in the fourth quarter is massive. And along with the in and out, with the ankle injury he dealt with this season, the Texans have had Will Anderson on somewhat of a pitch count. Right? We've highlighted in recent weeks that he played a little more than half the defensive snaps. He's not an every down player. Generally, the third series of a game, he'll start it on the sideline, and then if it gets to a passing down, he'll go in. Right? Danielle Hunter played more than 200 more snaps than Will Anderson this year. But having those guys as bookends, you mentioned Denico Autry, who really made minimal impact. Obviously, the 6-game suspension has started out, but then 3 sacks in 10 games. Can anyone come up with a signature Denico Autry play this season? Well, until the playoffs. So he should be fresh. He's 34 years old, but not a lot of tread wear on the tires this season. And be it Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, to have fresh pass rushers to be able to continue to go in the second half, in the fourth quarter, and money time, just absolutely essential.
It was. I think Autry was the one that blocked that extra point. He got a sack in the game. Really nice job for him. Also want to give credit. They got Foley Fatukasi back this week.
Mm-hmm.
And, stopping the run against the Chargers was a really big deal. And if you guys remember that first drive, like Dobbins was just picking up 6, 7, 8 yards, everything we were terrified of. But eventually, I guess, D'Amico made some adjustments, and they really, got that running game shut down. I thought that was really huge right there. So Mario Edwards had a good game with a couple sacks. It was just killer defense. And to answer your question, Brandon, the only thing I worry about is this is pretty normal for the Texans defense at home. You saw them pick off Jared Goff 5 times and what they did to Josh Allen and Tua. But when they go on the road, we just haven't seen the defense, put together a performance like we saw today. So, can they take that with them on the road? We'll find out next week.
They advance beyond the B bracket with this win, right? They're stepping up from this point forward. Justin Herbert's a fine quarterback. Not in the Jackson, Allen, Mahomes class. Defensively, the Chiefs obviously are Super Bowl proven. The Bills in Buffalo, I don't think they say Bills swarm, but they do in Buffalo. And the Texans, presuming it is the road game, gonna be cold. And it's not as if none of their players have experience in the cold, but none of them have experience in the cold yet this season. And whether it's Saturday or Sunday could be a difference maker. Kansas City, for instance, forecast high for Saturday. It's in the upper 20s. In the Sunday, it's not going to get to 20. So that will be another challenge to the Texans on the road and in January elements.
We'd be remiss if we didn't circle back to the Rex Ryan comments saying how he thought that the Chargers basically had a bye in the first round. So someone in the comments said that by Rex's logic that the Chargers just lost in their bye. And I will add on to that 2 of the 3 people on this panel did pick the Texans to win today. So good for those 2 people. I don't know who they are. Don't really remember. We don't write those things down. I do remember that the game predictions apparently all three of us gave the Chargers way too much credit on offense. This game was not nearly as close as we thought it would be. That brings me to MVPs. But before we do that, I just want to remind everyone, please click like on the video right now. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We do appreciate the support. We will be live again after the next playoff game, and we'll be doing a preview leading up to that. So make sure you're subscribed with your notifications on so that you're notified every time new content drops. We also want to know who your MVPs are, so make sure you put those down in the comment section. Charlie, who's your MVP for round one?
Boy, you can go with multiple candidates. I like the idea of Derek Stingley as a chaser to a first-team All-Pro season with 2 interceptions in a postseason game. The last one, though, was in garbage time. I'm going Stroud because the pressure was on him. The first quarter and a half, he stunk. The offense was pitiful, and they did not turtle. It responded hugely. Right? It's the defense that gave them the chance, but they had to take advantage of that chance, and no one did so more offensively than C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, if Charlie didn't already take Stroud, I would have taken him. But I'll pivot to Nico Collins because Nico, 122 yards, 7 catches. Really, nobody else had more than 30 yards receiving except for Hutchinson, and that was just on that busted play there. He only had that 1 catch. So without Nico, giving CJ that primetime #1 receiver target, CJ can't do it by himself. So how about Nico Collins?
Yeah, those are 2 good picks. I'm going to go with a game ball here, and since this person's not a player, but I'm going to go with D'Amico Ryans because I think D'Amico really adjusted well, called a great game on defense, really had Herbert on his heels all game long. I just don't think anyone saw this sort of domination coming against the Chargers offense. Any final thoughts on this game before we wrap up this episode, Charlie?
Credit to the Chargers fans. They're not known for having much of a fan base. Their 8th season in LA, their home games, right? Fans from visitors flock. I was surprised at how much of their powder blue was in the lower level of the stands. Safe travels home, and to all those obviously affected, those who were able to escape Los Angeles to come to the football game with the fires there. But that's just consolation, fans. Hope you enjoyed your time in Houston. Resounding Texans win. Can they take the next step, at least in giving a strong showing, giving it a good go, as opposed to last year after whacking the Browns and then getting whacked in the second half at Baltimore?
I'm going to piggyback off of what you said, Brandon, and give credit to D'Amico for going for it twice on 4th down and getting it and keeping the offense on the field, being aggressive right there. We even saw a QB sneak from CJ Stroud. When do we ever see that? So way to go, D'Amico, being aggressive, and it paid off.
Yeah, that second quarter, or the second 4th and 1 was the one that Mixon housed it on. Just incredible, man. That's going to be it for this episode of Texans on Tap. We hope to see you back here on YouTube later in the week when we're doing our next round preview. Make sure that you're subscribed, your notifications on. Also, if you're an Astros fan, the 3 of us host an Astros podcast called Stone Cold Stros on our other YouTube channel, Sports Map Houston. So make sure you're subscribed over there as we're covering free agency during the off season. As for this show, come on back here, join in the conversation for our next round preview. And until next time, for Charlie and Josh, I'm Brandon. Go Texans.